Terrific. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Designing the Perfect Marketing Strategy for Your Plan Giving Program. My name's Nathan Stelter, president here at the Stelter Company. I'm happy to be here today to introduce our terrific presenter. But before I do, I'd like to say a couple quick words about our webinar series. Many of you are familiar with it, but as an industry leader in plan giving marketing, Stelter's long been committed to providing innovative solutions and education for the industry. And we're always happy to host this complimentary webinar series, and today, as a whole, as well as a whole slate of webinars throughout the year. Today's webinar is actually our 8th. It's only July, I believe, but it's our 8th of our 2020 curriculum. Also presenting yet this year is Claire Axelrod, who'll be talking about donor advised funds. Johnny Hayes, who many of you have heard, will help you to eliminate delays in obtaining IRA death proceeds, and Dr. Russell James will share his most recent observations on baby boomers. You can register for all these webinars by visiting our website at www.stelter.com/webinars, as well as Jen mentioned, you can go there to review not only the previous ones from earlier this year, but any of our previous last couple of years as well. As always, we'll send out an invite straight to your inbox as any of those webinars draw closer. Now back to our presentation today. Very excited to have a friend of mine, Kathryn W, on the docket today. Usually she's traveling all over the place, but as we all know in today's day and age, that is not happening as much or at all. And so we're fortunate enough to have her for about 60 minutes today. Kathryn's actually the president and primary consultant for Kathryn Miree Associates, now in its 23rd year of operation. Ms. Miree provides a full range of plan giving, endowment, and foundation management services designed to help nonprofits build long-term financial stability through plan gifts and endowment. She spent 15 years prior to that in various positions in trust division of a large Southeastern bank before joining a regional brokerage firm to establish its trust company and serve as its initial president and CEO. In these positions, she worked extensively with not-for-profit organizations and their donors in the management of private foundations, community foundations, charitable trusts, pooled income funds, gift annuities, and endowments. Kathryn is past president of the previously known as National Committee on Plan Giving, now CGP, past president of the Alabama Plan Giving Council, past president of the Estate Planning Council of Birmingham, and past president of Alabama Bankers Association Trust Division. Current member of Alabama Bar Association, and I had the fortunate pleasure of working side by side with Kathryn in the last year and a half on our national standards for gift planning success that she's been an advisor and a critical advisor on for us at CGP. As many of you know, she's a nationally recognized speaker and author on the nonprofit gift planning and administration topics. Received her BA from Emory University and JD from University of Alabama School of Law. I would like to hand off today the rest of your time. We've got about 55 minutes to Kathryn Miree. Kathryn, it's all yours.
Oh, Nathan, you just broke my heart there. The only thing that I heard in that whole stream was Mrs. Miree. That is my husband's mother. And you and I are close enough friends that you know I'm not Mrs. Miree. But
I did it briefly, and then I corrected myself. So yeah.
Okay. I had to tell you, wounded heart. Thank you, Nathan, and I am delighted to be with y'all this afternoon to talk about strategy for your marketing program. And the reason this topic is important to me is because one of the first things I hear from my clients often is, should I send 3 newsletters or 4? Should I send these postcards in conjunction with an email campaign? Is this the right language to use in our brochures? And I always have to stop and ask the question or respond by saying, I don't know. Who are you trying to reach? And what are you trying to achieve? So I want to sort of turn this discussion around a little bit and talk about marketing strategy. I want to start you at the top. Who you're trying to reach, who those segments are, what the demographics are for those segments, what are the key messages, what are our goals? Instead of starting with the tactical, thinking about all the many tools you have to use and how those will work for you. Jen, I'm going to need a little help. I'm getting that noise. It won't let me advance slides. There we go. So here's what we're going to cover. I want to start first talking about the challenges. And then I want to talk about creating an intentional marketing plan, intentional as in planned, strategic. Other ways to fine tune your marketing, how to tell if it's working, and then I'll leave enough time at the end to take questions. So let's talk about the challenges in plan giving marketing to begin with. I think your biggest challenges, many of your biggest challenges are internal. There is so much noise going on inside your organization. You've got annual fund, you've got major gifts, you've got all of them competing with plan giving. And what I keep seeing time and time again is that the plan giving voice falls to the end, especially in this environment with COVID, where everybody is working on trying to raise more money. Everybody's down, fundraising is down. They've moved estimates for the next fiscal year down. So you've got internal competition, you've got a lot of external noise. You've got so many people now. Vendors like Stelter have made it so easy to reach your donors through web-based platforms that you've got a lot of people doing that. Plus, you have this dilemma. Who's your donor? It is not easy segmenting and marketing to those donor segments. But in your eyesight, in your range of prospects, top prospects, they're going to be from 45 up to 85. So you've got that real challenge going on. Then I think in the marketing itself, so this is in using the tools that you have. What is the strategy? It's hard to see. It's so easy to look at other organizations and want to copy that, want to do exactly that. What are your goals? And I mean goals specific to each segment of marketing. You might say, well, our goal is to close gifts. And I would respond by telling you that marketing itself rarely closes gifts. We'll talk about tier 1 and tier 2 prospects in a minute and how to think about those. What about the focus? What kind of topics are you going to deliver to your audiences? And because there are multiple audiences, you might have strategies with different themes. The overall theme for everybody getting the newsletter might be the same, but when you begin to look at action items to achieve those goals, they might be different. And then learning. What are you learning from what you're doing? You can't just turn the key and let it go for years and years and years and expect the cash flow. So these are the sorts of challenges we're going to address when we begin to talk about marketing strategy. I think the next thing we have to talk about is the biggest mistakes that we make. And just remind everybody what I see there. One size does not fit all. You cannot send one message to that whole queue of donors, to those that are ready, to those that are not, and expect to get readable results. 2, maybe you have limited money. This is a little easier to deal with than you would think. If you have a strategy, then one of the thought processes you go through is, how much money do I have to execute? That's going to define in many ways your strategy. It isn't going to change your strategy, it's going to define it. Data limitations are one of the biggest #1 barriers that I see, especially for those of you in smaller organizations. Some of the larger organizations on this webinar may have data scientists and may have priority to get to data, but not everybody does. What about an inconsistent case? I'm going to give you an exercise at the end of this to look at that, but I'm talking about finding that clear, compelling, urgent case for plan giving. It's possible. It is absolutely possible to do, but I rarely see it. And not only should I see it as a separate and distinct but aligned case with annual giving, but it should be consistent in every place that I find it. And it's not just leave a legacy. That is not a great case. That is a very generic case. People have seen that. You need to personalize it to your institution. What is your organization's vision? What are you trying to achieve? Where are you going with all this? And then failure to evolve. Nothing works forever. Just like your algorithms to find your best prospects change over time, your marketing strategy has to change. And the only way you know when to change it is when you look at your data and can read that. And then there are the internal hurdles that I see with everyone. If you're going to be most effective in gift planning, you're going to integrate it into every single conversation with a donor of any size at all. And that can start fairly small, even under 10,000. So gift planning and integrating that conversation, starting with vision and what that donor wants to accomplish, acknowledging that cash is a limited part of the solution, since most people only hold 1 or 2% cash in their portfolios. If that's cash in money market, if you want to extend it to short-term bonds or, short-term fixed, that might move it up to about 10%. But the largest asset in everyone's portfolio is retirement plan assets, 24%. This is according to a Federal Reserve survey that they did and published last year. Second largest asset, publicly traded stocks, 22%. Third is going to be real estate, 20%. So the cash first voice is the most predominant voice in the nonprofits that I walk into. They want money, they want it now, they want it easy, they don't want to take any risk, they don't want any time spent on reducing these assets. So be wary of that. And too many words and details. If your marketing is all words, you're going to lose people. They don't want to know so much about the mechanics as they want to know the stories. They want to know about the why. They want to see the pictures. So, bring them in, help them identify. These are some of the biggest internal struggles that I see. So with that background, let's talk about creating an intentional strategy for your marketing plan and talk about where that starts. The 5 things I think you have to be focused on before you even sit down with a strategy is 1, mission. What is it that you do? What is that vision that you have? How are you unique? Then your donors. Your donors are, I will tell you this, so interesting. I have gone to different parts of the country. I'm from the South, if you haven't picked that up. But when I go to different parts of the country, they look at me and they think, and they tell me, they say, I'm not sure you'll understand our donors. They're different. And I look back at them and I really say, no, actually they're not. Your donors here in Maine are the same as donors anywhere else in the country. And your donors in Maine are giving all over the country. Your donors on the West Coast, they're the same. Their motivations are the same. They may have different focuses, different sectors that are important to them. But what motivates them, how you talk to them, I've found the same experience across the country, and I've talked to lots of donors. So what's unique about you? And then let's look at your donors and see who your donors are. Some organizations have donors that skew really old. Some have donors that skew really young. Where are you? What are your objectives? We'll talk about strategies and evaluation, but you've got to know ahead of time how you're going to evaluate. You've got to think about what capability you have, what ability you have to reach these donors and really analyze it. Everybody's going to have a different plan. There is no right or wrong plan. It all depends on you and where you are. And I would say in that vein, your plan giving maturity or your fundraising maturity is another big factor in that. Here's what I mean by that. If you have a very transactional program, you're all about annual fund, you're all about events. And I saw a number of organizations on this call that are probably at that stage. You're early in your fundraising maturity. If you're not yet to a strong relationship building platform that I see evidence first by major gifts and ultimately planned gifts, your messages are going to be different. You might have, for the early years, very basic messages all around bequest, and for later years, more sophisticated messages. So we'll talk about that, but just understand that's a factor before you even begin to plan. Here are the other principles you need to understand. Marketing rarely closes gifts. In my world, I look at plan giving prospects in 4 tiers. Tier 1, that's a very small group. It's the group ready for a conversation. We'll talk about how we identify them in a moment, but they've got long-term giving, highly engaged. They're ready for a conversation. Tier 2. Tier 2 is almost ready. They are in deep engagement with the organization. So they've got long-term donors, they're long-term donors, maybe not as long as Tier 1, but they've been giving and they're engaged, just not as engaged as Tier 1. I direct marketing primarily at Tier 2 because what we want Tier 2 to do, and it's a larger group, we want them to raise their hand so that we'll know they're ready for a conversation. If I can get in front of them face to face, we can plan a gift. But the marketing itself is designed to intrigue, to educate, bring them in, but get them to raise their hand and say they're ready. And third, gift planning marketing should be a seamless extension of the other messages you're sending the donor in annual giving, major giving, plan giving, campaign. You want all those messages to align, and it's very important that they do. Other principles. Donors are in ongoing engagement. This kind of echoes what I just mentioned. If they're getting messages from you from all over the place, that means that you need to respect that, but it also means you need to be a part of those messages. You're not a silo over here, a separate message. The more that you can integrate your message on the website, the better, the more powerful. Other principles, you need a strategy for each tier or segment of donors, and you must set clear goals if you're going to measure your effectiveness in doing this. One plan does not fit all. Every charity is unique. I've never put together 2 that are exactly right. I've already mentioned the stage of fundraising maturity also makes a difference. Where you're located, how your donors are dispersed. Are you a national charity with donors all over the country, maybe even outside the country? Or are you local, or maybe even regional in multiple states? Your staff size makes a difference in your plan. Your budget, your capacity with budget makes a difference. All of that affects your strategies and goals when you're planning. So here are our tiers. Let's talk about this for a minute. I told you about the first tier. There are really 5. Current Legacy Society donors are 1. They certainly need to stay in the messaging stream as much for stewardship as because you will see repeat gifts from these donors. Then we have tier 1, and here's how I've defined them. They're current givers. They've been giving 7+, 10+ years, depending on how long your data goes back. They've got a high level of attendance at events. Maybe they're volunteers. They serve on your board. They could be engaged in a number of ways. They're going to be between the ages of 45 and 85. And I know you've heard a lot of theory on this. I would say that donors create their first will in their 40s. I want to reach them in their 40s. I want them to commit to my charity early and keep it in there for the life. If I wait until they're 65 or 70, yes, it's closer to the date of gift, but there are already a lot of other charities in there, and we're going to be at the back of the line. Tier 2, you'll see, have a lot of the same markers, but they are just less frequency. Tier 3, I look at is all your other donors 45 and up. And then tier 4 are individuals who are not giving, maybe they're in contact with your organization out there somewhere, but you don't know who they are. Their names are not in your database. And then if you had to go even further to tier 5, that would be people walking around on the sidewalks that have no connection with you at all. We're not going to worry about those folks. So for each of your tiers, you need a strategy. And the strategies let me just take these one by one. If they have current commitments, they're Legacy Society members. The strategies are going to be strong stewardship, personal engagement and cultivation, discussion and a reminder of their impact that it's going to have now and later, and then gift planning options tied to circumstances. This is where we see the second gift through gift annuities, maybe through charitable remainder trust for people that already have a bequest in their will. The key messages: thank you. Talk about their long-term and get them to think about their long-term goals. What's their vision for your institution? I love that challenge in a newsletter. What do you see as the future? What's most important to you in the future? We're listening. How can we help? And will you tell your stories? One of the best forms of stewardship that I know about is getting them to tell you their story. So what about tier 1 donors? Strategies. You want to be one-to-one, whether they're in your portfolio, whether they're in a major gift portfolio, whether they're in an annual gift portfolio. That's a one-to-one conversation. They are ready. Ongoing stewardship. They've already contributed so much to your organization. And frankly, how do you get that call? The more you know about their contribution, the easier it is to get the call. So I'll call them up. Kathryn, I would love to come share with you some of the exciting things going on at our organization. I'm calling you because you have been a donor for 12 years and you are truly committed. I also know you've served on our board. I know you've been a volunteer at the hospital. You come to every event that we have. So I want to know more about that too. I'd like to talk to you about your passion and sit down and see if you might be willing to share your story with me and serve as a leader for some of the exciting things that are ahead of us. They know you're wanting to come talk to them about money, but it's a much easier way because you want their advice, you want their insight, you want to know more about them. I found it's easier to get the call that way. So ongoing stewardship strategies targeted to where they are in life, whether they're still working, whether they're in that retirement age, pre-retirement, that time right around retirement is very busy and is a strategy on its own. What are your key messages? You want to stay donor-centered. It's all about them. It's all about helping them meet their goals. It's all about melding their personal goals and charitable goals, which is what gift planning does like no other planning technique. You want to focus on long-term vision, the impact that they can have, put them in the picture, and you want to tell donor stories and you want to hear donor stories. That's such an easy place to start with a donor. Then we have tier 2 strategies. Tier 2, remember, we want them to get them to raise their hand. So it's a systematic engagement to educate and prompt a response. We want to get them involved. If I see people in tier 2, I can bring in to a mentoring program at a school or a volunteer program or engage them on the board or a committee. And the more engaged I can get them, the more connected they are with your organization. I want to drive them to your website with a purpose so that you'll increase the traffic. There'll be answers there for them. The key messages are always going to be donor-centered. It's not organization-centric, not about what you want, not about what you need. It's about how they change lives. It's all about how they impact lives. You want to build a sense of partnership. You want to emphasize outcomes and impact. You want to position your charity as a resource for them in more effective giving. You want to help them maximize their gifts and show them how to do that. Those are your key messages. Then we have tier 3. Where are we going to find them? They're just going to be on your website. So I don't have any marketing strategies for them other than to integrate those messages either in annual giving, in major giving, and principal giving, as well as throughout your website. I like to have those bubbles on your program pages that say, learn how you can impact lives, and it takes them to your gift planning page. So your strategies are to build donor loyalty, educate, build a vision around impact, introduce basic planning concepts, provide resources for them, but you're going to do that mainly through your website and that platform. You're not going to be mailing to everybody in your database. So stay donor-centered in whatever you do. And tier 4, I'm going to catch the tier 4 in the tier 1, so I didn't even do a separate page for that. But let's talk about how to fine-tune your marketing in other ways. I want you to do this simple exercise. Go take all your marketing materials, from your program brochures to your annual giving, to your capital campaign booklet, to any other collateral that you use for fundraising. And I want you to assess it. Does it set clear expectations for donors? Here's what I mean by that. If you say, you can become a member of the Legacy Society. Well, of course I can. Everybody can. That's not a clear enough expectation. You should become a member to impact the future. Join others to ensure the future. Give them something that is an action item, not passive like you can, but you should, or join us, or take the next step. Just be more affirming in the way that you set those. Position donors as partners in mission. Read your materials. Do they talk about what you do? Or do they say anywhere in there, my favorite phrase, which is, this would not be possible without our donors. Thank you. You change lives. Simple, clear. You position donors as partners who ensure your success. As I'm sure you know, if they don't donate, you don't operate. So it's only right that you should position them. Does your marketing talk about the impact of giving? Is there a clear, urgent, compelling case for giving? And I'm talking about the case for donor investment. Do you celebrate your donors when goals are reached? Just look at your marketing and see what you see. Use a checklist. Also check consistency, clarity, brand. Is it the same across your marketing? How well do the materials tell your story? How does your charity stand out? What is its unique element? Is the case for investment across all lines of fundraising, and is the branding consistent? If it's not, you're going to confuse your donors. They may not see it. And I think stories are critical. I love stories. So many of you are doing a great job with your stories. I tell you, I saw the best thing from one of my clients. They sent an invitation to donors who had been giving 20 plus years. They had so many loyal donors, and who had left a gift, many of them through their estate. And they invited them in, those that lived, it was a national charity, but they invited the local ones into the studio and asked them to tell their story, and they recorded it. And then they used a clip of that interview, of that story, and sent it with emails to say, I thought you'd be interested in hearing John and Mary's story. This is why they give. Thank you for all you do. And it was powerful because, as we know, our donors can say it a lot better than we can script it. So tell the stories. Make sure when you tell the stories that you see all segments of your database. Once you've decided what those segments are, let's have them represented. And let's tell those stories. Let's integrate them, not only on the gift planning page, but throughout your website. And when you tell the story, emphasize outcomes, why they did it. You can talk about how they did it, but it's always the why that drives the giving. And it's about the power of each gift, not the size of each gift. One of my favorite stories to tell is about Osceola McCarty, who was a Black woman in Mississippi who washed clothes for a living, dropped out of school in 6th grade to support her family, and left a $150,000 gift, a scholarship to the University of Southern Mississippi for other women like herself who wanted an education. And it's just a powerful story. It's not about the amount, it's about the heart. It's about the why. And if you just talk about why donors give, many donors, you can tell from the way they tell their story, are not wealthy. We hear a lot about the wealthy and the big gifts. Tell the gifts about the smaller, tell the stories about the smaller gift. And just make sure everybody can recognize themselves in there. Other strategies. I keep saying this, I'm going to say it one more time. Integrate gift planning messages across your platform. Tie marketing to resources. That is, if you want them to take the next step, Send them a postcard. Learn more about charitable IRA. What do you want them to do? You want them to go to the website, learn more about it. You're going to give them a form, or you're going to show them how to do it. That's what you want them to do. That's what you're measuring. If your marketing in your newsletter or your postcards or your digital emails is driving traffic and people are opening them and downloading the material, that's a big success. Use action verbs. We've talked about that. Go back and review your language. So I see a lot of passive language. Use active language, active verbs to get things going and get them thinking. And I like to use themes for a year and come at it from every single angle. If we know that 90+% of all plan gifts are bequests and beneficiary designations, they're pretty simple. Where do you start to think about planning? You do it in the process of estate planning. If it's going to be a bequest, you've got to have a will. So let's talk about effective estate planning, and let's come at it from every angle, from making the case for estate planning to what the key elements of an estate plan are. It's more than a will. You've got durable powers of attorney. You've got healthcare appointments. And then how do you select an advisor? What are 10 things you need to know before you go see your advisor to do estate planning? If you run your year and take it from all those angles, by the end of the year, they're going to have really substantial information about and all the tools they need to do estate planning. Or you can focus on retirement planning or meeting family needs, and it's the same idea. You come at it from all different perspectives, and every year you may have a different big theme. I personally think that is more effective than popping from one idea to another, to another, to another. And of course, in all of these, you need donor stories. There needs to be a gift type highlighted that they can go get more information about. Use thoughts like that. Who are you trying to reach? What do you want them to do? And how are you going to get them to do that? For me, it's just that simple overriding thought. And if you have more money, don't be afraid to try something new. I love bequest surveys for discovery. I love them. They can be done by telephone, digitally, by print. And I also like bequest challenge campaigns where you raise a matching pool of funds, and when donors provide you the details of their gift, you match up to 10% of it. And that match money then goes directly to a purpose they pick at your institution. So those are some options you can layer on in a campaign sort of format if you want to go a little deeper, or because you're known to unknown rate on estate maturities is such that you know that there are a lot of undiscovered estates out there. So how do you know it's working? You've got to track it. And I mean every campaign, every mailing, every activity. You want to look at opens, how many hands were raised, how many inquiries did you get, how many opportunities for conversations, and how many closed gifts ultimately resulted. Counting is not perfect. You can't always tell why they pick up the phone and call you or why they might contact you through email, but you can get a good feel for traffic and inquiries that are tied to marketing campaigns if you track it. And if you're going to track it, you need to respond. You need to think about whether your goals were appropriate if you didn't meet them. Was the group properly segmented? Were the messages appropriate? Was the platform appropriate? What would you change if you did it again? Did you reach out? Did you have the wrong tier 1 group or tier 2 group? and what are the long-term trends that you expect to see. You can really cobble together a lot of information if you are paying attention and take the time to track the information. So that's really for me, that's a pretty straightforward approach. You will learn so much on your own if you take this very careful approach to marketing. You need a strategy and marketing plan every single year, and it needs to be complete from segment to segments that you're trying to reach, to goals, to tracking results, to then having that long review of what comes next, what really worked well, what didn't seem to work, and where do we go from here. And at this point, I would really like to open it for questions. And I'm going to depend on Jen and on Nathan to get me back in the game here with some questions.
Yeah, we do have a couple that came in. I do invite people to go ahead and keep sending them, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. The first one here is from April, and you were talking, Kathryn, about the different tiers and the number of years that they had given, 3 to 5 years or 7 years, and she's wondering, is that consecutive giving?
Oh, that's a great question. Here's my warning on consecutive giving. I often do 7 out of 10 years, or 10 out of 15, or 5 out of 7. And the reason I do that is because, especially in this environment where now we estimate that only 10% of all taxpayers will itemize, many people are lumping distributions in donor advised funds. So that means you're not going to see them show up every year necessarily. It may be every other year. So just be wary of that. The computer, when you do a screen of 5 out of 5, 7 out of 7, 10 out of 10, it's very unforgiving.
I think that's a great point. I know a lot of people, depending on how the data has been maintained or what type of system they use, have to navigate that a little differently. I had a good question here from Bob, and I think this is a really important one for not only Frontline, but obviously the powers that be. But can you elaborate on the importance of trying to find out more about a donor's values rather than leading with the organization's priorities?
Oh, that is the only way I know to have a conversation. That's a whole nother webinar, how to have a conversation. But my opener for donors, it doesn't go right to values. I want to get to know them. But my opener is always, thank you. You have been a great donor. And I use all those factors that made this donor the reason I called on them. You've been giving for 12 years. You've been on the board. You've been a volunteer. You participate in our events. Your child goes to our school, or you have season tickets, all those things. And then I'll say, when did you make your first gift? And then I'll ask why they made their first gift. And then I'll say, well, you have been giving now 12 years. What is so important to you about this organization that you are such a great partner with us? And that really, if I can get through those kind of questions, then I can begin to ask more value-based questions. I can ask about their children. I'm looking around the room. If I'm in their room, and will we ever meet a donor again in our lifetime? I'm hoping so. I miss my donors. But that sort of platform can lead you to questions about what is their vision for the future? What's most important to them about your future? Here's another favorite question of mine. What was the best gift you ever made? Not the largest, but the best gift you ever made. And I like to watch them. They think about it and they begin to smile. And then I'll say, you need to tell me why that was the best gift. If I can know why, that was the best gift for them, I'm going to know how to engage them in conversation about the gift I'm talking to them about. So that's where I think that fits in, if that answers your question.
I think
think
that's
so.
that last point in particular, Kathryn, I think is great because, and I remember Jay Steeneisen speaking years ago and talking about, as a fundraiser, sometimes it's hard to be quiet and just wait for the answer. And so the water test of taking a drink of water and waiting, they will tell you, when you ask those types of questions about why they will tell you.
They will. And if you go in with your laundry list of all the things they want, they shut down.
Yep.
All the things you want, they tend to, you begin to give them a shopping list, they tend to shut down.
We have a question here from Julie, and Nathan, you might want to chime in on this as well. Julie says, we are under pressure to send marketing digitally this year. What advice do you have for making the argument to send printed plan giving marketing pieces as well?
Well, I think you can, if you don't have a budget, and many organizations that I work with, their budget has been slashed. They really have very little marketing because they're trying to keep staff. And I get it. So I think you could do an awful lot with digital. If you can intersperse it with some postcards, that would be great. But send your newsletter digitally. You can do that. There are a lot of things you can do digitally. And certainly you can do email, but not all your donors are on email. You probably don't have email addresses for all of them. The most I've seen, I see some that have 65, 70%. And maybe if you're a more transactional organization or online giving, you have more. But you're going to miss a big swath of your donors if you are only digital.
Yeah, I would concur with that. That last part that you brought up there, Kathryn, about how good your email addresses are, how many you have is a big, big issue because you will likely miss folks. I think the other thing to think about too is how much does your organization already send email outside of plan giving? What level of email fatigue may your donors or prospective donors be seeing from you? Because that will really impact the open rate and the click-through rate. I'm with you. I think it's always best to have a combination, and no doubt a lot of people are facing budgeting challenges. If you do have ability to do anything print, I would look at doing a survey of sorts, or looking at ways that will create a two-way dialogue, since so many of us won't be able to sit in living rooms and kitchens and visiting with people for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I'd say also another option is to jump on to other publications that are going out. Get space in those. For those of you who are in universities, a lot of your schools are still sending their own newsletters and things. So jump into those during this time when you might be tight on budget.
Great point, great point. I know I've got a couple of questions here. I know Jen, you still too. We got 10 minutes. This is awesome. Chuck had a great question, Kathryn, and this may lead into, I know you have an upcoming webinar with CGP. This may lead into this. How do you raise the issue of plan giving to the many charities that are totally clueless as to what plan giving is and what it does for an organization?
You've got to start at the top. You've got to start with that internal case for support. When I look at the case for plan giving, you've got two cases. One is an internal case. That's the case to management. It's why you need to engage in plan giving. And the second is the case for investment to donors. That looks very different. That's why they should invest. So it's that internal case. You've got to be able to explain to the board and to the executive team why it enhances annual giving. Russell James just got great survey results back that showed donors increased their annual giving significantly after putting a bequest in place. So you've got a current impact, you've got a deferred impact, but I also look at it from this angle. The key to my case is you're leaving money on the table. You spend all this time, you invest a lot of time and money in engaging with the donor, developing a relationship with the donor, and you're only going to ask them for annual gifts. Why not both and? It is not either or. is not either a plan gift or an annual gift. We want both and that's the expectation we want to set with donors. But you've got to help your board and management understand, or they will stick with cash today.
Okay, we have a question from Sue. She says, in the absence of having done any previous plan giving marketing, how do you go about setting your goals and your metrics?
Well, in a lot of ways you're guessing, but I would think about it. If you want to say, we want to have at least, and this might be a little sporty, 2% open rate, and we want to generate, if we're sending 1,000, we want to generate X number of opens and X number of raised hands. That's where I would start, and you'll learn. You'll just learn. And if you're not getting a high response, if you don't think about best case and gosh, to make it worth my time, I've got to do at least this, get at least 5 opportunities for a conversation. You start there, and then you learn what is your response rate, how are you doing, and you adjust as you go forward. So I think in year 1, if you've never had any goals, you need to be reasonable, but you need to just do your best. And then year over year, once we have a year of history, then I know what I'm trying to do. Either I'm trying to drive more, or I'm trying to focus more. You'll tell if something gets absolutely flat, really no open or interest at all. I don't think that was something they're interested in. So no answer. I know you want a number, but there are no numbers. I can't tell you.
No, that's true. And I think the big thing, especially for folks who are juggling plan giving with major and annual and events and everything else, you know, it's around, especially plan giving, it's quality versus quantity.
It is.
It always will be. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to impress on the powers that be and the folks that you're working with. Because that's the hardest part when you have folks coming over from annual giving or direct response that are so wired for number of responses versus quality of responses. Another thing I've seen too that's worked really well in the first year is being proactive. And maybe now if people aren't traveling as much and visiting folks after something goes out, randomly call a half a dozen or a dozen folks and use it as an opportunity. We sent this out, one, to make sure it made it to you, see if it was about.
That's a great idea. You know what? I've always told people the greatest marketing tool there is, sorry, Nathan, it's face-to-face visits. That's totally. The best marketing tool you have, bar none. That's what's so important about your strategy. Tier 1, you need to go see them. If you can't see them, you need to Zoom away with them. If you can't Zoom away, you need to phone away with them. Whatever you can do, but they're ready for the conversation. So what Nathan is suggesting is great. And I hope most of you, all of you, have taken advantage of this COVID time to call people because they're home. And they seem to be taking calls more often than not.
Very true, very true. And I would echo, I mean, face-to-face, if every fundraising or nonprofit could hire appropriately to have enough fundraisers for face-to-face, wouldn't need to do marketing, but that's never going to be the case. And so we need to kind of work together, but hands down, face-to-face. This is an interesting question for Eva, and I have thoughts on this, and I think we're probably very similar on this, Kathryn, but how useful is it to have a plan giving officer who is also a JD?
Well, there's a question. I'm going to give you my lawyer's answer. It depends. I have met more experts in gift planning who did not have a law degree. I've also met many experts with law degrees that know a lot more than I do about the technical elements. That isn't the key. The key is how comfortable they are engaging with donors. And I've met some lawyers who are not engaged, who are not comfortable at all with that. And I've met some who are natural. So when I'm doing recruiting or helping people screen staff, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the technical. I want to see whoever it is, law degree or not, can they hold their own? Do they know what to do? But I am looking more for what they enjoy most about donor conversations. I want to know if they can do it. If they can't, they'll never be good at gift planning. They may be good at the technical coaching, but face-to-face with donors, it's very difficult.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, I know some of the biggest shops in the country for planned giving are led by folks without JDs.
Right.
And it's all about being able to understand and, more importantly, listen to the donor.
You know, in law school, I did not recall a single iota of the tax course that I taught. I don't think one fact stuck in my head, not a single one. Everything I've learned through practice out on the road. So that colors my judgment as well.
I think we have time for one more question. Marion is asking, her organization is planning to send 4 planned giving appeals this fiscal year. The marketing organization who helps only wants to focus on bequests because that's the largest piece of planned giving. But Marion, would also like to highlight other gift vehicles such as stock gifts, IRA, charitable rollover, and donor advised funds. And she's asking you what you recommend.
The latter. I recommend that you include those messages about gift planning. It is often those conversations that will get them into conversation with you. In this environment where people don't have much cash and they're reluctant to spend the cash that they do, then I want to show them 5 ways to make a gift without writing a check. Or something, you know, I want to show them how to use their donor advised fund, how to do the charitable IRA rollover if they're 70 and a half or older, how to use publicly traded stock. You focus, that's donor centric. And those are key gift planning messages you ought to be integrating in your marketing. So, gosh, I'm sort of opinionated.
I think that's why you're here. I have had a lot of people send in just their thank you. They wanted me to express their great thanks for your time today, and they really appreciate your expertise. And I had another woman say she loves to hear your accent, Kathryn, because she's originally from Alabama, but she lives in Colorado now, so she doesn't hear it very often. So yeah, so that is all the time we have for today. And I'm sorry, something's popping up on my computer. If you did have a question that we didn't get to, there were a couple of them, and you really would like an answer, Kathryn has offered up her email address. It's on the screen, kwmiree@me.com. So you can reach out to her through email. You can also reach out to Nathan or myself if you have any questions about today or our webinar series in general. And if you have any questions about Stelter's products or services, you can visit us at stelter.com. And then finally, another question that came up quite often was, can we get the handouts and the recording? And the answer is yes, we are recording today. So as long as it all went smoothly, we will get that ready and put it up on our website along with a PDF of the handouts so that you can easily have those and print them off at home. So that is the end of what we have for today. Thanks, Kathryn, for being here with us. We had about 550 colleagues signed on today, so that's quite a nice audience. So thanks so much for being here and spending the last hour with us. Thanks, Nathan, for being here as well. And we hope you guys are all being safe and healthy and having a good summer. And we'll see you again next month for our next webinar. Bye-bye.